In a world where everyone believes money runs everything, what would you think if I told you that money once didn't exist at all? Hard to believe, right? The very thing people fight for, sacrifice for, and build power around actually started as nothing. The truth is that the idea of value was once just a fragile, invisible concept built entirely on trust. But that simple idea evolved into the most powerful force that would go on to shape humanity. This is the story of how money was born and how it changed everything. Thousands of years ago, long before coins or paper bills existed, people lived through barter. A farmer traded wheat for a pot. A shepherd exchanged wool for bread. But there was one huge problem. What if the potter didn't need wheat that day? That single question changed history. People realized that simple barter wasn't enough. They needed a universal language of value. And so, the earliest form of money began to appear. At first, it wasn't metal or paper. It was anything people collectively agreed had meaning. Shells, salt, silver, even stones. The important thing was never the object itself, but the meaning people gave it. This shared belief created the first economies, the first systems of trust, and eventually entire civilizations. Then metals appeared, gold and silver. Rare, durable, and beautiful, they became symbols of stability. And rulers quickly understood their power. The world's first minted coins, the ancient Lydian coins, carried the seal of a king. That seal meant one thing. The value of this coin is guaranteed by the state. For the first time in history, people shifted their trust from individuals to authority. This small change dramatically altered the course of history. Money was no longer just a tool for trade, it became a force. It could build cities, fund wars, unite people, and shape empires. Humanity had discovered something far greater than simple exchange. A universal power understood by everyone, everywhere. But this symbol of trust would soon become something much more complex, a system capable of uniting the world or dividing it forever. As civilizations grew and advanced, money was evolving right alongside them. The first coins had worked brilliantly for trade, but they also created a new problem. Carrying large amounts of metal for commerce was both dangerous and exhausting. People began searching for a safer and smarter way to store their wealth. And that's when the next major step in financial history took place. Temples and merchants became the first trustworthy guardians of money. People deposited their gold and silver with them and received a written document. In return, a promise that their wealth was safe. At first, these documents were nothing more than simple receipts. But soon they began to circulate just like money itself. After all, why carry heavy gold when you could carry paper that represented the same value? That single idea forever changed the way value moved. Over time, these written promises evolved into what we now call paper money. Kingdoms and empires began issuing their own documents, their own currencies, each marked with unique designs and seals to prove authenticity. Money's value was no longer tied to its physical form. It now depended on trust, record-keeping, and authority. In 11th century China, the first banknotes called jiaozi were already in use. In Europe, exchange bills became the lifeblood of international trade. Money had become faster, lighter, and far more powerful. But this convenience brought new dangers with it. When trust was shaken, when a king printed too much currency or merchants doubted the value of a note, entire economies could collapse overnight. History learned a harsh lesson. The real power of money came not from gold or paper, but from belief. And once belief was lost, even nations could fall. In the next episode, we'll explore how this invisible force, humanity's faith in money, built empires, ignited wars, and shaped the destiny of the modern world. Money was no longer just a tool for exchange. It had become a force capable of determining the fate of empires. From Rome to the Ottoman Empire, from China to England, every great civilization rose on the same foundation, the flow of money. Wealth no longer came from land alone, but from the speed at which capital moved. A state or ruler's power was now measured not by how much gold they possessed, but by the continuity of economic circulation. But this power introduced a new concept, interest. When people lent money, they wanted a little more in return. At first, it seemed like a fair reward. I took a risk. I deserve compensation. Yet over time, this idea shifted from a balancing tool to a mechanism of exploitation. As interest rates climbed, the poor grew poorer and the rich grew richer. This sparked both economic and moral debates. Religious authorities banned interest. Philosophers argued over it, and leaders searched for justice. But human nature didn't change. Some sought ways to gain more, while others simply tried to repay what they owed. Still, finance was not purely a destructive force. The same system expanded trade, fueled inventions and discoveries, and opened new paths for humanity. Thanks to interest, merchants found capital. Ships set sail and new roads, ports, and cities were built. Money had become more than a medium of exchange. It was now the engine driving human progress. At times it brought prosperity, at times collapse. At times it stood behind peace, and at times behind war, always as an invisible influence. And history taught one clear lesson: money is never neutral. Whoever holds it, and however they use it, shapes the direction of humanity. In the next chapter, we'll see how this power merged with the Industrial Revolution to give birth to the modern economy, transforming money from something kept in chests to something that lived in factories, stocks, and investments. By the late 18th century, the world was standing on the edge of a massive transformation. Steam engines had been invented, and the factories they powered filled the skies with smoke. Money was no longer just something stored in chests as gold and silver. It had become the lifeblood of production. The Industrial Revolution opened a completely new era for both humanity and economic history. Wealth no longer came from land. It was born from the power to produce. But this new system introduced a major concept of its own: investment. And for this system to function, massive investments were required. Huge factories, machines, labor forces. None of these could be financed through individual capital alone. People began forming partnerships, pooling their resources together. This allowed multiple individuals to invest in a single idea. This new mindset laid the foundation for modern corporations and stock markets. People were no longer only buying products. They were buying ideas. Cities like London, Amsterdam, and Paris became centers of trade and capital. Stocks and bonds replaced gold coins that once changed hands. The face of money had changed, but its goal remained the same: to grow value. Yet every opportunity came with risk. Some companies became wealthy overnight, while others collapsed and disappeared. The concept of an economic crisis entered human history for the first time. People began to understand that money was not only a tool but also a fragile balance. Even so, this era marked a turning point for humanity. Finance was no longer something that concerned only the wealthy. It became a force that shaped the lives of everyone, from workers' wages to farmers' loans, from city electricity to the speed of global trade. Everything revolved around money. The Industrial Revolution transformed money from a simple medium of exchange into something far greater. Finance had become the engine of innovation, entrepreneurship, and human ambition. In the next chapter, we will explore how this transformation paved the way for the digital age, when money left paper behind and began living on screens, and humanity's understanding of value changed forever. With the Industrial Revolution came the rapid growth and expansion of cities. As production increased and new manufacturing techniques emerged, machines became more advanced, gradually surpassing human labor in efficiency. And just like every major shift before it, by the end of the 20th century a new revolution was quietly taking shape: the digital revolution. Finance was no longer confined within factory walls. It was moving into an invisible space, the network of information. Money was no longer passing through hands. It was moving through data. With the rise of computers and the internet, finance transformed into an entirely new form. Banks were now protected not by vaults, but by servers. People began managing their accounts without ever visiting a branch, handling everything with just a few clicks. Money had turned into numbers on a screen. This was both fascinating and dangerous, because every convenience created a new dependency. In the early 2000s, the world was introduced to the concept of mobile banking. People could now access their money from anywhere and make payments in seconds. It created a sense of freedom unlike anything finance had seen before. But it also raised a new question. If money could exist entirely in digital form, did we really need banks at all? In 2009, a radical answer emerged. A group of developers created a digital currency called Bitcoin. This system was controlled by no government and no bank. Every transaction was recorded transparently through a technology called blockchain. Yet no single person or organization controlled the system. Trust no longer relied on people. It relied on mathematics. At this point, the very nature of finance changed completely. Money stopped being a physical object and became an idea living in lines of code, network connections, and algorithms. Value was no longer measured in gold or silver, but in information, data, and technology. But just as throughout history, whenever power shifts, new risks emerge. Digital money removed borders, but it also introduced new dangers: cybercrime, data theft, algorithms influencing human decisions. Humanity once again found itself facing the possibility of becoming a prisoner of its own creation. Even so, this era marked a point of no return in financial history. Finance was no longer just the heart of the economy. It had become the heart of technology itself. In the next chapter, we will complete humanity's 1,000-year journey through economics. We will see how money, power, and trust intertwine, and why, even in the digital age, the essence of finance is still deeply human. And perhaps then, we will rediscover what real wealth truly means. One of the oldest questions in human history, what is value, still has no clear answer in the digital age. So who actually decides what something is worth? And who truly owns that value? These are the questions we must now explore. Today, money has taken on an untouchable form. Banks have turned into algorithms and ledgers into blockchains. People no longer carry cash, yet with a single tap they can move billions of dollars across the world. This invisible force has spread through every part of modern life at a speed history has never seen before. But that speed brought a new danger: finance drifting away from humanity. Trade was once done face to face. Now robots, software, and AI systems make decisions in fractions of a second. Markets are no longer driven by people, but by algorithms. And while this has made finance incredibly efficient, it has also turned it into a cold, emotionless system. Yet even in all this chaos, one thing has never changed: trust. Even in the digital age, the value of any system is measured by how much people believe in it. Because no matter how advanced it becomes, technology is still a tool created by human hands. Today's money is not just a reflection of the economy. It is a reflection of human psychology. Whoever controls it shapes the future of society. But the real power has never belonged to technology alone. Real power lies in how people choose to use money, wealth, and information. From the first Lydian craftsman who struck the earliest coin, to the encrypted asset stored in a digital wallet today, This journey proves a single truth. Finance is the mirror of humanity. Money, trust, and power may appear in different forms throughout history, but their essence remains the same. Because the heart of finance is not found in machines, it lives in human intention. Real wealth is not how much money you have, but what you choose to do with it. That's the story of thousands of years of finance. From the birth of money to the rise of the digital age, this journey is really the story of human evolution. And this story has no final chapter, because finance is a future rewritten every single day. And now, we've reached the end of a journey that began thousands of years ago. From seashells to digital currencies, from gold coins to algorithms, this was never just the story of money. It was the story of trust, hope, and human imagination. Today, we may see money as just numbers on a screen, but it still represents the same thing it always did: the faith people place in one another. Maybe in the future, money will exist entirely in digital form. Maybe AI will one day rewrite all the rules of finance. But no matter what happens, the heart of finance will always beat with the same force: the human spirit. So as you finish this story, remember this: the power of money is not in the one who holds it, but in the one who decides how to use it. If this journey reminded you that finance is not just numbers but humanity's oldest language, then you're exactly where you need to be. Thank you for joining me on this path from the past to the present, and for discovering what real finance truly is. Now it's your turn. To earn, to share, and to create value, that is what finance should be. Until we meet again in the next video, remember, everything begins with a single idea, a spark, and that spark can ignite the next great transformation in our world.